I decided not to wait to reinforce the horizontal stabilizer mounting point. I took several layers of this carbon fiber weave material. It's extremely thin, and I put 4 layers that start at this edge here, go under and up to this edge here. And then I wrapped around about 5 times with what's called carbon tow. It's a like a thin strip of strands all running in the same direction. And I just did this with Zap resin for fiberglassing. Probably added a gram or 2 at most. This stuff is so thin, as you can see. I think it strengthened it up a lot. I didn't feel the need to wrap over the top because this plate is being held down by the screws. The real objective was to strengthen the balsa wood and to anchor that balsa wood securely to the tail boom. Noticed a lot of areas, I'm not sure how well this is going to come out on camera, where the covering is loose. It's just not fully tight. There's ripples. If you look along the wing here, the leading edge, you can see that the covering is actually loose from the surface. One of the things I'm going to be doing is taking a few minutes with the handy dandy covering iron, and I'm going to go over all of the iron-on covering surfaces and make sure everything is tight and well bonded and the edges are sealed. Well, I've got the horizontal stabilizer attached to the tail boom, and I have the tail boom rubber banded to my airplane stand, and that allows me to get back here and check out the surfaces, eye things up with a triangle. Little tools like this are really handy to have. And I'll definitely say this about this kit: everything is very well done. I've got a little issue here and there with very small stuff that I'm going to improve. For example, strengthening the tail boom. That's a very minor thing. It may never come into play if you have this airplane and don't do what I did. You may never have an issue with it. I try to make things as strong as I can because airplanes do crash and they do break. The covering issue, not a big deal. I would make that a point of doing that with any airplane that I got as an ARF. I would go over the covering. I've purchased high dollar airplanes that the covering wasn't completely sealed, all the way. So always go over stuff. A lot of kits have a time to build estimate, like you should be able to put this together in an hour, or this shouldn't take more than a couple hours to put together. Just because you can throw an airplane together in an hour does not mean you should. There's no prize for finishing first. In fact, you're far more likely to have problems down the road and not have a reliable plane. Plus, you always want to take your time when you're setting up the radios, setting up the throws for the servos, trying to get as much resolution out of your servos as possible. I'll talk about resolution in another video. I'm going to do some videos on tuning and programming radios, where I'll go into this kind of topic in a lot more detail. In any event, I've just got this placed in here to verify that everything is square. And as I said, they did a very nice job on this kit. No adjustment was necessary. Just slide this into the pre-cut slot, and it's true. It lines up perfectly. The relationship between the vertical and the horizontal surfaces are at right angles, straight out of the box. There's no need to do anything. Now, one thing I am going to do that is not in the instructions, they recommend using CA glue to glue this in. And yes, that is the lightest solution, but it's not the strongest solution. I'm going to be using some 15-minute epoxy, and I'm going to use it very sparingly, but I want to make sure I get epoxy underneath here and here, because this center section of the rudder is a hardwood or a ply, which is a lot stronger than the rest of the balsa. So I want to make sure that it's well anchored. I want to make sure that this edge here, where the carbon meets the fuselage, is well attached, gusseted a little bit. So what I'm probably going to do, I use a lot of these when I mix up epoxy. These are kitchen skewers. You can get them for like, 50 or 100 of them for a couple dollars at almost any grocery store. It's just, I think it's bamboo. And I use these to mix glue and to apply it. And a lot of times I mix epoxy on these little notepads. They're just a small notepad. I'll mix small amounts of epoxy in a couple of spots, tear the sheet off, throw it away, onto the next one. And it's a lot easier than trying to do it in cups and stuff. A lot of times I'm making very small amounts of epoxy to just do a little joint. And, I don't need to mix a whole ton of it. I don't want to waste it. In any event, I'm going to go ahead and do the gluing process off camera, and then I'll show you how it looks. Oh, as I was saying, one of the things I'm going to be doing, I'll be using the stick, the pointy end, to reach in here a little bit and make sure there's a little bit of glue on either side there, so there's some glue below and above in these joints here. To try to make sure that they are as solid as can be. I'll try to get out as much excess as possible so I'm not adding unnecessary weight. But I like this glider a lot. I want it to last. I was very surprised, actually, that this is as nice as it is. I was expecting it to be kind of cheap because it's very inexpensive, comes with all the radio gear, it's a mass-produced plane, it's not a nice carbon fiber one. Let me just show you the wing profile here. That is one thin airfoil. That's going to be a very aggressive, fast-flying plane. This should be a lot of fun. Now, when you get to this step, make sure to remember that there's a top and a bottom to the rudder. The bottom has this little piece of hardwood, like a little gusset, to protect the rudder or reduce wear when this thing lands with the, the tail is lower than the rest of the fuselage. It's just that type of design. So it is all glued together and drying at the moment. There's no need to prop it or clamp it. And as you can see, there's no real visible epoxy. I did a very clean job. What I did was put a very thin line on the wood where the surfaces were going to meet on both sides, and a little bit on the boom here and here where this part feeds over the top of it, and then a teeny bit on each of the edges of the boom where it's going to make contact, just to make sure that there was a little bit of glue on all the surfaces. Then I slid it into place, and then I added a little more glue above and below on the inside and outside with the stick, as I mentioned earlier. And then what I did was I moved the rudder up and down a little bit, rocked it up and down so that it would smear the glue onto the surfaces and get it evenly coated. Then I used some just little balsa sticks. It's always good to keep any scrap balsa wood around. I've got several boxes full of scrap, and when you need something, you've got it. And I used these to smear away any excess glue, and then I used the skewer, the pointy end of the skewer, to reach into the tube and smear the glue along the surface and remove any excess, wipe it off, stick it in again, draw it out, get as much glue out as possible, so that all was left is a little bit of glue on the surfaces and then in the joints where it really needs to be. So this should turn out to be nice and strong and not give any problems in the future, or at least it'd be as trouble-free as possible. So that wraps up the tail section. I'll cover the horns and connections later. Basically just following step by step for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're learning a lot about the Raven. Please click like, please subscribe to my channel, and if you enjoyed this video and you want more, subscribe and then click the little bell icon, and that way you'll get a notification as each new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and I appreciate your support.